Hey everyone, welcome back. Ever try to wrap your head around how two people can open the same Bible, same exact words and all, but come away with totally different ideas about what it means?
Right.
It's kind of wild, right?
It is.
So that's what we're diving into today.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
We're going to unpack how one pastor grapples with some seriously big questions like sin, law, grace, the heavy stuff. You guys sent in some sermons by Pastora Sandra Ribeiro. She's from Deus y Nos Igreja online.
Okay.
And wow, does she ever go deep on this whole law versus grace thing?
Yeah, her take is really interesting. It's not just about, follow the rules or else. She gets into the core of what it even means to be human, to be flawed.
Right. Are we always going to fall short? And if so, how does that affect our connection with God?
Exactly. And she basically says, trying to be perfect, trying to follow every rule, it's an impossible standard. We're set up to fail from the very beginning.
Which, let's be real, most of us can relate to that feeling of never quite good enough, right?
Yes.
But the good news is, she doesn't leave us hanging. This is where she brings in this whole idea of circumcision of the heart.
Yeah, that's a powerful image.
Through the Holy Spirit. Total game changer.
So forget trying to earn your way to being righteous. It's about an internal transformation.
Right. So we've set the stage, but to really get how she builds this argument, we got to look at the Bible verses she uses. This is where it gets really good.
Yeah, she picks some really key passages. Right off the bat, she goes to Genesis 2.7, the creation of Adam.
Okay.
Where God breathes life into him. And for her, that's huge EE. It says so much about what it means to be human.
Because if God makes us, and we're already flawed,
right.
And that's a question people have been debating forever, right?
Yeah, it gets into free will, destiny, the whole thing.
It's a lot.
But by starting there, she sets up this idea that sin is universal.
Okay.
And she backs it up with Romans 3.23. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. It's not about Jew versus Gentile, it's everyone.
So we're all in the same boat then, huh? Dealing with this built-in imperfection.
That's her point, yeah.
So where do we go from there? Well, Pastor Ribeiro has some thoughts on that, and they are powerful. That, my friend, is where we pick up in part 2 of this deep dive. Okay, so we're all kind of messed up, right? That's what we established. But then where does Pastor Ribeiro go with that? How does grace fit into all of this?
Well, she goes straight to Galatians. Kind of a big deal in the New Testament, right?
Yeah, okay.
And specifically Galatians 2.16, where Paul's boom, a man is not justified by observing the law, but by faith in Jesus Christ.
So that's it then, huh? Just faith, not following all the rules? Seems like a big jump. How does she explain that to people?
This is where that whole circumcision of the heart thing comes back.
Right, right.
It's this powerful image, outer actions versus inner change. Not checking boxes, but this radical, shift in who you are.
Right.
Through the Holy Spirit.
So it's about what's going on the inside more than just doing the right things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can see how that would be really appealing to people. But doesn't it also seem kind of well, if it's all about grace, not the law, couldn't someone be awesome, free pass to do whatever I want?
Right. That's the age-old question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And she does address that, Pastor Ribeiro, I mean. She seems to be saying that real faith, really surrendering to the Holy Spirit, it changes you from the inside out.
So grace isn't an excuse to be a jerk, basically.
Exactly. It's about wanting to live differently, even if you don't always get it perfect.
So a real change of heart, trying to be in line with God, even when you mess up.
Right. And it's ongoing, not just a one-time thing. You're always working on it, always depending on the Holy Spirit.
So it's more of a journey then, not just a finish line you cross.
Exactly. And that journey, it's based on grace, not our ability to perfectly follow all the rules.
Okay, that's making more sense. But I bet some people listening are thinking, hold on, don't other Christians say that actually trying to follow Jesus's teachings is important?
Oh, absolutely. And that's something we should definitely talk about more. Pastor Ribeiro is really focused on this freedom from the law, but there are definitely other ways of seeing it.
And that's what I love about these deep dives. We get into all the nitty gritty, not just scratching the surface. It's we've got all these different lenses, right? And we're looking at the same text, but seeing something totally different.
Yeah. And that's what makes this whole thing so challenging, but also really exciting. You see how people have been wrestling with these ideas forever.
Okay, so you were saying before, Pastora Ribeiro is coming at this from a certain angle, but other Christians might see it differently. What did you mean by that?
Right. So she's all about freedom from the law, But then you have other folks who say, no, grace is important. And these was how we live, like trying to follow what Jesus taught us.
So it's both, not just picking one or the other.
Exactly. Grace isn't a free pass to do whatever. It's what gives us the strength to actually live the way we're called to as Christians.
Okay, so then how do you actually do that? Where do those teachings come in?
Well, they might point to something like the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus gets really real there, talking about love and compassion and justice.
Yeah.
It's about trying to embody those things, not because you have to, but because grace changed your heart.
So less about checking things off a list, more about who you are deep down.
Exactly.
But that sounds really hard, honestly. Like, how do you balance that? The freedom, A&D, the trying.
That's the million-dollar question. And there's no easy answer. It's something you wrestle with, you know? Looking for answers in the Bible.
So what do we do then if someone's listening to all this and they're thinking, man, my brain hurts? What's the takeaway?
I think the biggest thing is don't be afraid to ask the questions.
Yeah.
Even if they're uncomfortable. And be open to different answers. You might be surprised.
So don't just assume you've got it all figured out. Keep searching.
Yeah. This whole faith thing, it's not about having all the answers. It's about being willing to keep learning.
And we're all learning together, right?
Totally. We're all in this together.
And on that note, I'm going to leave you with a thought. Maybe the point isn't to have it all figured out. Maybe the point is the searching, the questioning, the journey itself. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Keep those conversations going, and we'll see you next time.